Hello, welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm. It is, what day is it today? Tuesday, the 19th of August. I've still got a spring in my step, after a victory at Old Trafford beating Manchester United. Tonight, we're going to talk about three things that Arsenal have to improve fast before the season is well and truly up and running. Sorry for being late. My apologies. Pythag did join just a few minutes ago, but I accidentally called Sammy Mockbell. He's picked up the phone. He's at the PFA Awards tonight, just about to go into the after party. But I'm going to bring him on tomorrow because what the hell is going on at Arsenal Football Club? And that is where we're going to start. Leo Trossard has signed a new deal at Arsenal. However, it's just a pay rise. It's no extension in terms of duration of contract. And that's where I want to start. I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend, Rais, who is at Pythag in Boots and of the BBC and so many other things. Been seeing you, rubbing shoulders with Michael Richards and the like, and Wayne Rooney. What's been going on, man? Welcome back to the channel.
Yeah, it's been a manic last couple of weeks. So obviously the BBC Sport series that I was on, I got invited to a few events on the back of that. But more interestingly and excitingly, Sky Sports obviously got in touch to ask me to be an analyst for them on their new Friday Premier League show. So I did my first segment on that, which was interestingly Gyökeres versus Seshko. And this week I'll be back on and discussing Eze. So yeah, watch out for every Friday, sort of 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. I think that Friday Premier League show's on. And yeah, I'll be on the previews for that.
Good. I tuned in and it was very good, although you're hype about Shesko. Got to disagree with you there, but that's a conversation for another day. Eze, will he be in Tottenham White, or maybe there's a last gasp move from Arsenal? We will explore that and wait and see that until that comes on Friday. But Rais, listen, this is the tone of tonight's show. Head is on Mars, says Forder on Football. This club is finished, says Toby Agugwa. There's lots of nice chat as well. Good evening, everybody tuning in from wherever you are watching around the world. Please do drop a like on the video. And if you enjoy the content tonight, subscribe to the channel. Leo Trossard is the place to start. I was walking home from work thinking about what a wonderful evening I'm going to have with my children and preparing the slides for coming on live tonight. And then the news breaks, maybe about an hour and a half ago. Gunnerblog, who everyone will know of The Athletic, James McNicholas, says, exclusive, Leandro Trossard has signed a new deal or agreed a new deal at Arsenal. The 30-year-old will have a salary increase to reflect his role in the squad. But critically, the deal is not extended. It will still run to 2027. So let me just explain that in layman's terms. We've given someone a pay rise without any extension of contract for someone that, well, if you believe the rumours over the summer, Arsenal were looking to move on or open to offers for. I can't make sense of it, and I'll have my go second, but I want you as a non-Arsenal fan to just tell us, what do you think is going on, Pythag? Like, how is this news taking you?
It's a bit confusing, to be honest with you. The only way I can think of is that they obviously were trying to get rid of him potentially. No move came about, and likewise they couldn't source a replacement for the left wing. So obviously they were linked to players like Eze, they were linked to players like Rodrigo. So perhaps they had him on the back burner, holding him off a little bit, thinking let's just see if we can get someone who's an upgrade. They couldn't get that. Then obviously to re-motivate him, re-energize him and make him feel like he's part of the project again, they basically said, let's give him a pay rise, get him back on board again. So I think it's kind of one thing you realize, especially being a football agent, is clubs are very callous in the way that they treat players. As much as they want to give off the impression they're family clubs, what have you, every club is quite callous. They treat players like pieces of meat. And I think this is what's happened in this instance. They've kind of very callously, they've tried to find an upgrade. They've not managed to get one through the door. And now they're trying to re-energize him by making him feel part of the team again. But at the same time, they don't want to give him an extended contract because of his age perspective.
Now, of course, there's a lot of Arsenal fans, right? They're going to be judging Andrea Berta's summer by this. Viggs, welcome to the show, says Berta is a fraud. We are giving an employee a pay rise, making it more difficult to sell him. Now, of course, we don't know whether they were actively trying to sell him. Now, the noise was there, obviously, over the summer. You've got to be careful what you believe, but it doesn't feel like the club is looking to sell him if they're willing to offer him a pay rise to stay for exactly the same term. I personally am completely gone with this. Like, he is not a player that is going to get any better, any more energetic, any younger, any more influential on this team. I think when he first joined, He obviously had a really good 6 months in that sort of second half of the season where he notched up some goals and assists. And look, I can't lie, he's come off the bench in clutch moments and really delivered us, goals at important times, game levelers and winners. And I love that. But this is the guy that we absolutely should be moving on because his return or his output in the team is going to be diminishing. He's not going to get any younger or mobile or energetic, like I've just said. So to offer him more money for the same term when you don't have to because he's contracted is just the mental gymnastics I'm trying to do in my head right now to understand why the club has done this. I can't, and I just know no one has come up with any sort of viable solution as to why this has happened. Now, I did read somewhere that the club had promised him a pay rise, some sort of gentleman's agreement that maybe after a certain time or a certain output he'd get that money. But I just think, like you said, clubs and the nature of the way that they treat their players, we've got to be ruthless. So if we are a serious institution, we should not be giving players pay rises without extending the duration of their stay, and for someone who's under contract already. I just don't get it. Mike,
Yeah, I was going to say, it strikes me a bit like how Manchester United just used to. Obviously, Arsenal are not that bad, but I mean, we just gave away money for free, and we're now suffering as an institution because of the back of it. Some of the salaries that have been given out to Manchester United players are absolutely ridiculous. And obviously, this is probably a first moment for Arsenal in that sense, but it's not something you really want to see going forwards.
It's not. I mean, I'm lost for words. These shows are normally quick and slick and fly out of the blocks, but this is completely thrown me, and I my head is rushing off to conclusions that maybe this is the transfer sort of activity done now for the summer. We've sort of settled on Leo. We think he's going to stay. We've offered him more money, and maybe he wanted to stay a little bit longer and just to keep him sweet, keep him happy. But I think a higher wage probably makes it harder to shift. It doesn't make any sense. Rancid Welcome says, to be honest, I don't get it. It makes no sense to me. I can't understand it. I'm not going to understand it, and I don't want to waste any more time on it. So look, Leo Trossard has agreed a new deal with Arsenal Football Club, annoyingly for the same period of time and just more money. And that is just the way that it is. Let's start by talking about what we saw at the weekend, Rice. Obviously a painful day out for your club. But before we do that, how could I forget? Patreon giveaway. Thank you for all of those Patreon members who support the channel and have been supporting the channel over the last few months that we've been live. Mikel Arteta is in conversation with Steve Kerr at the Londoner Hotel on Friday, the 5th of September. I have a pair of tickets to give away to one lucky Patreon member. If you are supporting the channel already, then you will be, your name will go straight into the hat. If you are overseas or you can't make it or you don't want to make it, I will give you a reward of some Arsenal vouchers to spend on you or your loved ones. But it's going to be a really, really lovely evening, an intimate sort of audience with Mikel Arteta, of course, Premier League football manager, and Steve Kerr, US basketball coach. If you want to go to the event, you can go over to alidacollective.com/what's happening. Tickets retail at £85, and I think it's just a couple of hundred people in the audience. So head over to the website if you are interested. Back to the football. 1-0 to the Arsenal. What were your thoughts as a United fan? What did you make of the game? What did you make of Arsenal's victory? Before we talk about some of the noise that has been chucked at Arsenal for being an uninspiring, sort of winner on Sunday.
I think, truth be told, I did think United were unfortunate to have lost that game. I think on the balance of play, if you look at things like field, till you look at various metrics, I think United dominated the game. I think obviously Arsenal, you got to bear in mind, they're playing away from home against kind of a little bit of a bogey team. Like United are very much a team that raises their game against Arsenal, and we've seen that in the past few years. Even when United are in the absolute doldrums, they seem to be able to pull out a performance against Arsenal. So based on that, you've got to be happy that you've come away with the points. It's just there's certain elements which I think from an Arsenal perspective they were concerning, and obviously we're going to touch upon in this video. So those are the things that slightly worried me. I think from a result perspective, you can't get better than that. A clean sheet away from home should, in theory, give the players a huge psychological boost, and with easier fixtures to come.
Well, you can get better than that in that, you always ask for a performance, right? And I've got to say, look, I've been following Arsenal at Old Trafford for a long time, as the viewers will know. And I've seen us play much better at Old Trafford and get pumped. And for me, the start of the season, when you never really know what your opposition are going to be like in terms of fitness and sharpness. And of course, Old Trafford, it was a glorious day. I was up there. United fans really sort of buoyant and confident going into the game. Fresh start, fresh hope, fresh optimism. And of course, we, were sort of chests out going there, expecting to get the win. In the end, I got to agree with you, Rice. I thought Manchester United did edge it, possession-wise, stats-wise, shot-wise, XG-wise. You can't sort of deny those things. And I thought United played well. They played better than I would have expected. I thought we'd boss that midfield, and I thought we'd give your defenders a tough day out. But I think they played okay. Your front three, Cunha looked really good. Mason Mount, I thought, put in a really good performance as well. So, look, there's probably lots of positives for United to take away. And for Arsenal, it's really strange because we've won 1-0. We've got the 3 points, got the clean sheet. But the media and the rival fans are like, this is the most uninspiring Arsenal, and Arteta's got all sorts of problems. Now, there are 2 or 3 things that we'd like to see fixed, and we'll come on to those shortly. But I just feel the noise is so unwarranted, and it feels like it's because it's Arsenal. Arsenal pumped Manchester City 5-1 last year, and we get criticised for that. Then we go away to Old Trafford and win ugly, we grind out a 1-0. We get criticised for that. It's like you can't win. They know we're an easy target, easy fodder. But you're right. It's an important victory, and it's a great way to start the season. And I've said it on the match reaction video. And if you guys are tuning in wondering what that is, check it out on the channel feed. Every match day or post match day, we do a match reaction. And I've sort of said that, to go to Old Trafford, a place where we drew last year, we had 14 draws in the league last year. This season is all about trying to convert some of those into wins whilst not, sacrificing anything else defensively and trying to do better in other games. And I think this is a really tough fixture on paper that we've crossed off. There's always some sort of needle between the 2 teams, and we've managed to get it out the way early. We just come home, take the points every day of the week. It's as simple as that. And
I think the other thing is obviously Man City putting in the performance they did, but against a far weaker opponent, obviously skews the media perspective on it. Secondly, Liverpool looked very fluid going forwards, but they looked very, very shaky at the back. So I think compared to that, I think because you also were, I wouldn't say you were shaky at the back, because obviously the likes of Gabriel, etc., put in some really good challenges to help keep that clean sheet. I think Raya was excellent in goal as well. But obviously because you conceded a lot of territory and you looked on the back foot, I guess when you compare it to Liverpool, it looks like, okay, well, they looked better in an attacking sense and they were poor defensively, whereas you guys were poor in attack and you were just about hanging on. So I guess based on that narrative, it looks like these 2 teams are ahead of you. But I think in the long term, the resilience you guys have from a defensive perspective in the long term, I think should be in theory superior to your rivals.
You're absolutely spot on. Vig says United didn't create a single big chance. Yeah, it felt like that. We didn't really create much either. We got obviously that goal from the set piece. Asheen says we had the lead so early on and wasted some excellent transition moments. We're going to talk about that just in a short while. And Mike Jones says what worried me most was Madueke's defending liability. We're going to talk about the left-hand side as well. So let's move on to the first point of today, which is our attacking play. You notice some flaws. This is obviously one of your excellent graphics. We're going to talk about 2 things: our left-hand side and how almost dysfunctional it is still 2 years on post Granit Xhaka. But there are some sort of green shoots. And then we're going to talk about Victor Gyökeres, because he was, as your words say, largely non-existent against a manager who would have known him inside out. So let's focus on the left-hand side first. Tell us what we see on screen.
So as we can see, Martinelli, left-sided player, Rice close to him in the LCM position, Calafiori just behind him. Now, I think you probably agree, Faisal, that a lot of Arsenal fans saw Calafiori as the resolution to this left flank problem. With Skelly inverting too often, Calafiori was seen as the player who can overlap and provide you with a natural width. Now, I was a bit skeptical about that because, in my opinion, Calafiori, once he's in the final third, he's definitely a solution because he's got a great left foot on him. He's a good crosser of the ball. So unlike a Skelly, if he gets into a wide position, he's going to look to whip that ball straight away. So that's great. My issue with Calafiori is that I think in that space between, let's just say, the middle third of the pitch, that's where your left back, for example, your more attacking left backs, they help drive the play forward. So if you look back at, say, an Evra, for example, that type of player, obviously Marcelo, these type of players, Nuno Mendes, Davies, etc. These players, once they play that 1-2 or they've got it in the middle third, they can just drive forward with the ball and then they can then go on and penetrate the final third. I think Calafiori in that middle third goes a little bit missing because let's just say Calafiori picks that ball up in the middle third, but on the flank, If he's got a marker in front of him, is Calafiori really with his footwork going to go past 2-3, around the outside of a player and really drive down that line? I don't really see that in his game. I think he's the type of player who needs it worked into a certain area of the pitch, then he can be dangerous. So I think there's a slight issue there because he's not a natural out and out attacking left back who can drive down that left. He is still, in my opinion, his best position is sort of left centre back in a back three is where I see him at his absolute best, or a balanced, slightly defensive left back who can then time his runs forward. I don't really see him as an out and out overlapping fullback. And I think that's what Martinelli needs if you're going to get the best out of him. And Rice, for me, in an attacking sense, I just didn't really feel it. I don't think he is an out and out attacking weapon down the left. And if Ødegaard isn't producing, then it kind of, I don't know, it looks a bit too neutered in those two cam LCM, right, RCM positions.
Well, let's talk about the left side first, and we'll come on to Declan Rice because he's taken a bit of stick, and I think, I want to just have a few words on that. Ricardo Calafiori is obviously a very talented boy, but he just can't stay fit, and he's so good at finding himself on the edge of the opposition box, and he loves to sort of give and go. Those secondary runs are really, really wild, actually, for a left back to do. Miles Lewis-Skelly, we know, technically fantastic breakthrough season last year. Defensively, not as solid, I would say. I think Ricky Calafiori is better defensively, but neither of them are your orthodox overlapping fullbacks. And that is what we talked about some weeks back, about trying to get the best out of Martinelli. And we talked about losing, Kieran Tierney and how it would be wise to get someone of that sort of profile. We still don't have that. And I think that is something that Mikel Arteta really needs to kind of understand. Well, not understand. Sorry, that sounds really patronizing because here I am on a Tuesday night after my day job talking about how Mikel Arteta can improve the team. But you know what I mean? We need to do something about that left-hand side that allows Martinelli to flourish, that allows us to have more width and more options in that final third. And I think you're right. And we'll talk about Noni Madueke shortly. Declan Rice, for me, it wasn't one of his best games. And I think it's okay to say that. Every now and again, you're going to get a player who just doesn't play as well as we know that he can. It was really strange. And he was substituted early, which is unusual for Declan Rice because he's normally an endurance athlete and lasts the pace of every game. So I wonder if there's potentially some sort of a niggle or some sort of fitness or bug or something that maybe he's sort of dealing with, and maybe we'll find out in the sort of press conference pre-Leeds this weekend. But Declan Rice is a sort of player that finishes games strong, and he always wants to be in the face of all the action, but he just looked like he was carrying something or struggling with something. And that was, when he went off, I was massively surprised because, you need him on the pitch. So I'm not too concerned by that, but I am a little bit nervous because Martinelli's getting a lot of negative noise. Noni Madueke came on for, I want to say 20 minutes, half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
He too didn't really manage to kind of get motoring. You've got some analysis there on Noni Madueke, so let's move that on to the left-hand side. Tell us what we see here and why Mikel Arteta needs to tweak that.
So what United did going to second half was become more aggressive on the right flank. So they brought on Ahmad instead of Dalot. Now, what that meant for Arsenal was that instead of being able to bring on Madueke and really go for it down that left and let him penetrate the sort of left flank space and drive Arsenal forward, they were now having to fight fire with fire. And it was which team was going to gamble, was going to basically win out. And obviously United being 1-0 down meant they just could go all out knowing that, well, we're losing anyway, let's just go hell for leather. So Ahmad really pushed on, which meant that Arsenal needed to defend that flank, because if they didn't, United were going to get back into the game. Now, Skelly was brought on, which I didn't really get, because in this situation, you're probably better off keeping Calafiori there and just telling him to sit deeper to help shore up that flank, because as you just mentioned, you think he's the better defender, and I probably agree with you. Bringing Skelly on, Skelly then was inverting into midfield, which then meant Marino or Rice, whoever was playing at LCM at that moment, was then having to come and defend at left back. And Madueke was then having to almost come back as well, because Mbeumo and Ahmad, both of them together on that flank, it was just too hot to handle. You needed bodies back there. So that Madueke was then almost forced by the nature of the game and how it was going to just come back and defend. And we've all been there where, let's just say you're playing 11-a-side football, and in your head you're thinking, I'm going to step onto this pitch and I'm going to be Ronaldo for the day. But suddenly the game just goes away from you. You're pinned back in your own third and you're almost playing left wing back. And that's what happened with Madueke. He just wasn't able to get out forward, purely because he sensed, and he wasn't wrong really, he sensed that the game needed him to sit back and really help his team out, and probably helped you guys to see out the win. So I know it doesn't look like he played well, but in theory, he's actually kind of done what he needed to do as a team player and got you guys through that game. So in that sense, he's actually done well. But from a chemistry point of view, the reason why I was a bit critical of it was, for me, if you just put a left back who's sitting back in that position and you get the closest CDM or midfielder closest to him and them to go as a two, then the left winger doesn't really need to come back, because those two players in theory are sat in those zones where those players are looking to go. On paper, they should also be the most defensively equipped players, because midfielders in general should be defensively more aware and intelligent than a left winger. Likewise, a left back should be more defensively astute than a left winger. So that's more defensively efficient than having your left winger come back. And then your left wing can be there for the counter. So once you won the ball, you can play it out to him quickly and he can counterattack. This for me was a very inefficient defensive structure, but also an inefficient counter-attacking structure as well.
I think you're right, and I want to come back to you on your Calafiori point. I think Amad Diallo came on about 10 minutes into that second half, and Calafiori had picked up a yellow just before half-time. And I think there was about 15, 20 minutes where Diallo was looking really threatening. Calafiori was doing okay, but I think as Calafiori is working towards his way to full fitness, but also being on that yellow, the clock's ticking down, I think Arteta, it was a sensible thing to bring Lewis Skelly on. You know, that freshness. Obviously, he's a good footballer, but he wasn't on a yellow, which was quite important. He did get one in the end, but that's a conversation for another day. But I think that was more of a protection thing than anything else. And I think, you know, Amad, I was surprised he didn't start, you know, because he's such a quick player, and he was the one player on the pitch, Rice, who looked like he could move the ball really fast. I don't know what sort of voodoo Manchester United have on Arsenal. Like, we never get the ball moving fast. We never seem to run fast. It was like playing with a bowling ball. We just couldn't do anything. I don't know, you know, no sprinklers before the game, after the game. The grass.
Let me
was
throw
really
a suggestion
dry.
at you. Let me throw a suggestion at you. So, as a manager, if you're looking, who would you think is the bigger threat between Amad and Dorgu?
I would say Amad. But
so why wouldn't you, as a manager, then put on Timber down the left? Because Timber versus Amad would be a much more balanced battle. And I know Timber plays at right back, but if you put Timber on, he's probably one-on-one going to give you the best chance of defending an Amad and taking him out of the game. Yeah. Whereas a Skelly, whose defending is very inconsistent, obviously he's a young boy, that's going to open you up more, I think, from a defensive perspective.
The challenge to that, bro, is that Jurrien Timber, when he's playing right back, his favoured position, he is quite limited in the final third. You know, we talked about sort of overlapping right backs as well some weeks back, if you remember. And so when you've got someone who's not a natural left back and you've got someone like Martinelli who struggles, I don't think you do Martinelli any favours by having a right back doing a job at left back when you've got.
Oh no, I meant in the second half. So if you brought Madueke.
Oh, my apologies. Well, I think because Ben White came off, didn't he? And then Timber had to play on the right hand side. But I mean, look, it's great that we've got all these options, but I'm really surprised that Amad started quite late. Which is interesting. So look, I mean, on that left-hand side, there is work to do. Noni Madueke, I don't know if he's going to be the first choice left-sided player. Gabby Martinelli obviously has a lot to do, and Leo Trossard, of course. Many of you joining the chat very late tonight signed his new deal. I wonder if he's going to get the nod this Saturday. Who bloody knows anymore? Let's move on to Victor Gyökeres. This is from the match reaction video, courtesy of Opta Analyst. A lot's been made of this. 4 successful passes in the entire time he was on the pitch. No shots on goal, no chances created. What did you make of his performance as someone who has studied him over the sort of summer and you know, appeared on various channels and made lots of content about him? And is this anything that Arsenal fans should be worried about?
To be honest with you, Faisal, I wasn't surprised based on what I saw in the friendlies. Like, you could already, I know he scored a great header, but it was almost against the run of play, if that makes sense, because I was watching with my Arsenal mate and we were both quite concerned. And which is why I think I spoke on the last time I was here. I spoke about the need to adapt to Victor Gyökeres. There needs to be this adaptation period from a tactical point of view, not just physical, because I do think his match fitness looks a little bit off as well in terms of sharpness. But I think it's the tactical thing. I think you've got to realize Gyökeres is the sort of player, almost the less touches he has, the better, but the touches he has have to be in a certain area of the pitch that suits him. Arsenal need to have less of the ball, which they did have less of the ball, to be fair, in this game, but it was almost not planned, if that makes sense. It was kind of just the way the game went. But he needs to receive the ball in the channels, and the ball needs to be played to him almost when he's on the shoulder of the last man, and like so that he receives the ball in space. I can only really recall 2 moments which felt like Victor Gyökeres moments, but he ended up fluffing his lines because he had such few of those moments. Once he got into them, he panicked a little bit. One was when he drifted out to the right and he picked the ball up on the wing, which is what he normally does for Lisbon. And he would usually pick out really good crosses from that area. But because it was the first time he had it, he just whipped that ball in. It ended up going for a throw-in, right? And the other moment was when he kind of stumbled on the ball down when he entered into the left side channel. Again, that's a very Victor Gyökeres type position when he's picking up that ball in that inside left, driving into the box, and then he does his little shift and he gets a shot off. Now, I think that those 2 moments were purely because it's that as a player, he's coming, he's realized he's having a bad game. He's not really seeing much of the ball. He's then got into these moments where he knows these are my bread and butter, and he's just emotionally, he's just made the wrong decision. He stumbled on the ball. Now, the more Arsenal can get him into those type of positions again and again, hopefully he'll become a bit more comfortable and composed and do better in those situations. But I do think at the moment Arsenal played way better with Kai Havertz, just because they're so used to having Kai Havertz up top. He's so used to having his teammates, and there's a synergy there, whereas there's absolutely zero synergy at the moment with Gyökeres. Now, that could come with time, but it might
will
not
come with time. Of course,
but you hope it comes with time. So I'm not going to write him off based on one performance, but there does need to be this adaptation period. Hopefully, up against slightly smaller teams, he gets a bit of a rhythm going. Coming up against a back three of Manchester United, it's not going to be easy. That is like literally throwing you into the lion's den. Against a manager who, again, knows him really well, he would know that Gyökeres' weakness is probably link-up play. And then he's gone and put De Ligt against him, someone who's, if I was to pick one Man United defender who really suits marking a Gyökeres, it'd probably be a De Ligt, purely because he's quite quick, he's quite powerful. He's not the highest IQ defender, but in a battle against Gyökeres, it just looks like a match made in heaven in terms of a man-marking job. So it wasn't an easy start for Gyökeres. So I'm not going to write him off. Hopefully, him and the team, there's going to be that period of synergy.
I'm going to come on to the familiarity and the settling in with teammates in just a second, because there's a great still from Sunday's game where we should have just played him through, playing to his strengths. But Gary Neville, really interestingly or absolutely bonkersly, has tipped Victor Gyökeres to be his Golden Boot winner on Monday Night Football last night. He said, and I don't know if he was doing it for views, but he sort of said that he saw enough in the game, little touches, the way he handled himself, the way he put himself about, the way he dealt with the centre-back, to show a lot of encouragement. And he's very, very different to Kai Havertz. And a lot of this depends on how Arsenal obviously tweak the game. Mikel Arteta needs to sort of tweak the game to get the best out of him. And one of the things is just improving in transition. And we had so many opportunities, and so many of you in the chat watching, by the way, hundreds of you watching, so many of you sort of astutely pointed out that we had so many opportunities to really thrive or help Victor Gyökeres make the most of these situations, because we scored early. We went 1-0 up in the first half. We really could have opened up Manchester United with the right ball, and there were 3, 4, 5 times when Ødegaard was running away with the ball, or he found himself in possession, as you can see there, just inside the United half. All he has to do there is play that slide ball straight through the two United defenders, the one on the left and De Ligt in the middle, and you can see the direction of travel from Gyökeres, and that will come. Like, it's just, this is, they have to get used to him. He has to get used to them. And that sort of, automatism, if you like, when your player's going to move and about the behaviors, it'll come. I'm so sure of it, right? Like, I sort of share Gary Neville's sort of sentiments, because on the journey home with my boys coming back to London on Sunday, I was saying that, like, there were little things that I really liked from Gyökeres, stuff that we just don't see from Kai Havertz. Really grappling with the centre-back, running out wide and using his force and strength, and that relentless sort of running. He was just running the channels as much as he could. He got knackered towards the end, but you got to remember, he joined midway through the summer. He didn't have a pre-season with Sporting. He joined us while we were on tour, had that hour against Athletic Club, scored obviously a goal at the Emirates. Fantastic. Played 15, 20 minutes against Spurs in a game that, we didn't really do so well in. So it's one game. And it's the first game away at Old Trafford on opening day of the season. So this guy, it wouldn't surprise me if he started against Leeds on Saturday and nabbed 1-2, maybe even a hat trick. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
think
I think
he's
he needs
definitely
that.
got it in him.
He needs that. He needs to play against like a team where you guys just smash out of the park. You got to realize Old Trafford's a big pitch as well. So if your fitness is a bit off, it's going to be a hard place to just run and run and run. So I think get him against a nice, easy opposition. And I think, one stat that I want to touch upon, which I spoke about in the Sky Sports segment on Gyökeres, was that Sporting average 5 passes per possession. Arsenal average around 7.5 passes per possession. So you're a team that almost just likes to pass the ball more than you need to sometimes. And this is a classic case in point, this graphic here, because instead of playing that extra pass and holding on to it a bit more, as soon as you got your head up and you see Gyökeres, you need to be able to read his body language and read the body language of the defender that's closest to him. That defender doesn't really fully know where Gyökeres is. Gyökeres' body movement is already looking to make that diagonal run. So as that attacking player, you need to already have sensed that and play that ball through for Gyökeres just to run onto, because he's got a march on the defender there. And by not spotting these opportunities, you're basically wasting the whole point of Gyökeres. So I think, like you said, this needs to become an automated feature of Arsenal. It's not going to happen overnight, but against the smaller teams, probably that gives you your best chance of doing what you're doing in training, but doing it in a game scenario before it becomes almost absorbed into your bloodstream and almost becomes muscle memory. And we're not going to get that overnight because he hasn't played with the team enough.
He hasn't. But listen, there's a few of you saying that they reckon Havertz is going to get back into the lineup. I think Gyökeres starts against Leeds. I think he'll probably score against Leeds. But I think the Anfield game straight after that, I think Mikel Arteta will go for Havertz because, there's different needs, different benefits to having
100%.
both players. And you're going to need
100%.
that workhorse, right? So that's what the versatility that Arteta has. Saeed, welcome to the show, says they told us that Ødegaard will have a great season. No need for Eze, tongue in cheek. Let's talk about the skip. This is the third thing that we sort of talked about. I thought Sunday's performance was very unusual from Martin Ødegaard. And it kind of goes back to the reason we were talking about Declan Rice not being himself. I thought Ødegaard was more dually, challengey, physical than I've ever seen him. I saw, and I don't know if it was Tony Adams' comments that kind of riled him up during the week, but there was that sort of coming together with Cunha, and he was doing his whole sort of captain's thing, pushing them away. I liked that side of him, but what he's not quite motoring on is obviously, picking up the ball and doing all the glorious, glamorous, glitzy stuff that we want him to do, which is chance creation and sort of freeing up the players and really, dictating the tempo of our attacking play. What do we see on screen here? What are your concerns?
My concern was that, especially in the second half, he had a lot of space to work with once Mount got taken off. Because Bruno and Ugarte, that's their average position. So that graphic shows the average positions of the players on the pitch. They're both looking to press because obviously United were losing at the time. So they're trying to bomb forward, win the ball high at the pitch, which leaves a lot of space then for Ødegaard to operate in theory. So he's already behind those midfielders. There's no CDM there to defend against him in theory. I want to see him really breaking through with that ball, driving with that ball, piercing into space, and taking the game to United. If you're going to be a world-class number 10, like a top-level number 10, you have to grab the game by the scruff of the neck. I don't feel like I got that from Ødegaard for me. I don't know if you guys disagree or what have you, but I need to see more from him. And I've been a big Ødegaard supporter because I do think technically, IQ-wise, he's a top player. But he needs more oomph in his game for me. It's weird. I wish him and Bruno could almost take little things from each other. I wish he had Bruno's drive, and I wish Bruno had more of his general sort of football IQ.
Intelligence. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Them two forged together would be one hell of a player. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this with United fans walking out of the stadium, but I think with Ødegaard, I think you're right, Rice. I think, we want to see a guy who is unlocking defenses, who is doing all of the sort of silk, pre-assists, assists outside the box, who is dictating our tempo when we attack and really sort of the conductor, the one who unlocks everything. Unfortunately, last year was a really difficult season for him for a number of reasons, many of which we're not privy to, and we can speculate all we want about his injury and about him becoming a dad and just, one or two other things. The season before, when he scored all those goals and got those assists, no one was complaining. He showed his sort of, brilliance there. But I think you're right. On Sunday, he he showed the ugly side of his game, and I was really pleased because Declan Rice wasn't quite at the races, and Ødegaard, I think, was getting dragged into doing some of the physical stuff in midfield. I think when Rice is fully functional and Zubimendi is settled, I think you'll start seeing the best of Ødegaard. And we talked about Ødegaard on this channel over the last couple of weeks, where Ødegaard will thrive when we have movement ahead of him. You know, when you've got Kai Havertz, he doesn't have the knack to want to play on the defender's shoulder and make those runs in behind again and again and again. Bukayo Saka gets doubled up, tripled up on, so he's almost like a closed door. Martinelli's out wide, hugging the touchline, much to my frustration. And so the ball's rarely going to go to him. So there's nothing else sort of happening for him. But now we've got Gyökeres, and now we've got someone unknown like Madueke, and now we've got Saka obviously getting back to his best. And if we can fix that left-hand side, whether it is Madueke or the left-back situation helping Martinelli, we become a little bit less predictable. And Zubimendi as well with the early ball from midfield. So I think you're going to see a lot more movement. It'll open up more spaces, and hopefully we get to see the best out of our skip. Vig says Ødegaard was dribbling a bit poor in the final third passes, but I liked his performance. Absolutely right. Ødegaard has to release the ball quicker. He does delay the pass, which affected Gyökeres. I think that's the point that we're trying to make on that last slide. And Khan says Rice wasn't himself. Martin did a lot of the carries, got stuck in. Yeah, that was my point. Just held on to the ball at times too long. We know that Martin Ødegaard can do that. He needs to release the ball quicker. But overall, he had a good game, says Roman Hoax. Just his final ball that was off. And I think, again, once that familiarity comes with the likes of Victor Gyökeres, it'll come.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we didn't touch upon was obviously the Nwaneri downwind aspect. I think in certain games, let's just say if you sense that Ødegaard's being a bit passive or he isn't quite at the races, for me, Arteta needs to be braver in terms of either taking him off or shifting him over to LCM, changing it a little bit, just giving him a new impetus on the pitch. And sometimes there's certain game states where Nwaneri might be more effective. For example, if you've got a more counter-attacking type of game because you're already in the lead, Nwaneri is going to drive into space more than an Ødegaard. So it's little things like that. I think you've got such a good squad. I think Arteta, in the long term, he just needs to utilize it more. Not just always. I think with Arteta, when he does use the squad, it's always down the sort of certain positions on the pitch. For example, left flank, he sees Martinelli as a player that he can take off and rotate. Saka's seen as a crown jewel that can't ever take off. Ødegaard sometimes kind of falls into that territory. I think you got to get rid of this crown jewel concept. You got to concentrate more on what players are doing in a particular game, where their fitness levels are at. If a big player needs to come off because you sense that he's low in terms of energy levels, low in terms of effectiveness, just get him off. Get a young player in, get whatever in, and just keep that team sort of churning over. You can't just do this thing where it's like these crown jewels must stay on the pitch the whole time. Because if you look at Man City, you look at Pep, he's never really done that. He's never really just kept his, even like the likes of De Bruyne would come off, even the likes of Aguero would come off. So I think Arsenal need to, for once in their lives, they need to actually copy what Pep Guardiola is actually doing, because I think that would actually work for Arsenal.
I think you make a really, really valid point about just squad rotation and squad freshness. When you give young players a chance to play, it also puts them in the shop window. It also puts their values up. It keeps them fit, ticking over, takes minutes out of senior players' legs that you can afford to rest and keep fresh for bigger games. I think that's something that Arteta just has to learn. He's a young manager still, 6th season in his entire life as a football manager. And I think now he's built the squad this summer. Not many people aren't happy. We haven't got our left winger. We've just signed Trossard up to, well, not really an extension, but just more money. But we have done some important stuff this window. So hopefully we do see some of that rotation. Rancid, appreciate the point. I know it's the point of the show, but I think it's kind of useless to overanalyze the game. We're not overanalyzing the game. I think, as football fans, we had this long summer where there was no football and we were so excited about the opening weekend. We've gone and seen Arsenal, not at their best, but we've managed to get a win. And there are always things that we can talk about. There are things that we notice, that we observe, that we keep going on about for 2-3 days. And it's nice just to kind of get together and dissect some of this stuff. So I know you're a loyal viewer of the channel. I know you're not taking the piss, but that's how I feel. Gaming since 2010 says the biggest issue is when Ødegaard comes off, the press weakens significantly. That is an excellent point. Rice, you'll know that Ødegaard is the press trigger. He's so good at it. He's a pressing monster. The game was better for him to stay on than Ethan Nwaneri. And of course, Ethan Nwaneri is a young boy, and a stadium like Old Trafford has the ability to sometimes sort of just, gulp young players up, and they get the stage fright and they sort of freeze sometimes. But we shall wait and see. Can I ask you one last question? Nothing to do with Arsenal, just before we go. Alex Isak has released a statement on Instagram. Apparently, the trust has been broken, and now he says that it's better for both parties if there is a change. As a United fan, I know it's going to be frustrating for you to see him walk into to Anfield. But if that happens, surely that's Premier League done and dusted for Liverpool.
I think if they get Isak through the door and they get Guehi through the door, because I'm adamant that they also need Guehi. The reason why is they're very, very top heavy as a team. One big injury to their defensive unit, let's just say Van Dijk has a season-ending injury, or Konate, that team is going to struggle big time from it. And they're already teetering on the edge from a defensive point of view. So they really, really need defensive reinforcements. If they get Guehi and they get Isak, for me, I can't really see who beats them, truth be told. I think get those two through the door. I'm back in Liverpool to be sort of title winners and semi-finalists, finalists, Champions League, potentially could even win it. I think those two are massive signings.
I hate that club. I just honestly. Oh man, do you know I'm having a bad day? Yeah, I had such a wonderful day in London with my firm and my work.
that Trossard thing really sent you on the edge, man. I've never seen you like this, bro.
I have not even felt in my full flow today. The loyal viewers will know, like, FK, what the hell has happened to you? Honestly, it's completely taken the wind out of my sail. I cannot understand why we have signed up a player to just more wages on the same duration. It makes absolutely zero sense to me.
Are you worried about the precedent that you could set?
Mate, I don't even know. I haven't even thought that far ahead. I'm just like, why are we doing it? This is a guy that had a little bit of value, and someone that we should be looking to move on, to free up some funds to go and get someone like an Eze, who of course is now going to go to Spurs. Liverpool now, that's virtually a transfer request from Alex Isak. It just leaves a really bitter sort of taste, and I'm just jealous, basically.
Yeah,
especially because so jealous
because Isak would have been so goddamn.
Oh my god! Don't even. We courted him for like 18 months only to not make a move for him in the summer he's available.
I might be a United fan, but I've really, really wanted Arsenal to get over the hurdle. And you might probably wondering why. It's just because I feel like, when I'm as a coach, when you see what Arteta's done to take the club from where it was to where it is now, and to not get over that final hurdle. As a coach, that hurts. Just as because you can relate to that, when you've done all the hard work to put the foundations down, and I just want to see him finish the job off. And I feel like Isak, for me, I was looking at him, I was like, this guy is he's the missing piece of the puzzle. He's the sort of striker that you need, because Gabriel Jesus for me was the perfect type of centre forward for Arsenal.
Oh, don't, man. He's going to finish me off now.
I know. Because for me, Gabriel Jesus was the type of player who can do all the silky sort of link up Arsenal-y type stuff, but then he's got the dagger in the final third at the right moment. I think that's this type of centre forward for me that just screams Arsenal. That's the type. When I look at those type of centre forwards, I think that's an Arsenal player. And I'll be real with you. Obviously, when it was Seshko versus Gyökeres, I was a bit like, I think I was open with it. I've said Gyökeres doesn't strike me as an Arsenal type of forward. So for Gyökeres to work, there's going to have to be an adaptation. Whereas someone like Jesus, you just looked at and you're like, that's just an Arsenal player. Do you know what I mean? So that's Isak just frustrates me, because that would have been so perfect. So perfect.
You're telling me, man. You're telling me. Listen, it's been a lot of. Well, it hasn't been fun. Who am I kidding? I'm grateful for your time, man, and your input as always.
Of course.
But listen, it's just going to be, I think, a frustrating end to the window if we don't get any more in. And this Leo Trossard is the sword that Andrea Berta lives and dies by. We shall see. If anybody wants to follow Rais, he's available at Pythagorean Boots. Also, you'll see him all over sort of socials and on the Sky Sports fan show on Friday. If you are tuning in for the first time and you've enjoyed the content, I don't even know why you've enjoyed today's content, but if you've enjoyed today's content, please do, of course, subscribe to the channel. If you're supporting on Patreon, thank you so much for all of your kind support and generosity. You'll be in the hat for Friday's draw for a pair of tickets to go and see Mikel Arteta and Steve Perry talk at an intimate event in London. And those of you that are YouTube channel members, also so grateful for all of your support. Really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with Sammy Mockbell. If you've just joined us, I was late because I was on the phone to Sammy. I called him by accident. He was at the PFA Awards going into the after party. Hopefully we get some gossip and some transfer updates tomorrow. And then Thursday, we'll do a members-only Q&A before Friday's Late Night Lounge. Look after yourselves, sleep well, stay cool, and don't cry too much. Bye for now.